The year was 1930. The day was Tuesday, September 9th, and the weather in Milwaukee, Wisconsin was a beautiful sunny 72 degrees. This was the day that Lillian and Joseph Effert welcomed their fifth child into the world, Margaret Mary Effert. Margaret was born at the beginning of the Great Depression era, and she was the fifth of 11 children that Lillian and Joseph would have together. The family got by on earnings that Margaret's father Joseph made as a baker, and eventually, when Margaret was around 10 or 11 years old, her father and brother Sonny opened their own bakery. Around this time, the world was starting to recover from the Great Depression, and things were starting to look up for the Effert family. Sadly, these good times would be short-lived, as tragedy struck the family just a few years later. Margaret's mother, Lillian, unexpectedly passed away in 1945 after a surgery to remove her gallbladder left her with a blood clot that claimed her life. Lillian was only 39 years old at the time of her death, and Margaret was just 14, with 6 siblings that were even younger than her. Margaret's father, Joseph, did not take the death of his wife well. Tragically, he turned to alcohol, and within a few months of Lillian's death, all of their children who were under 18 were placed in an orphanage. Throughout her life, Margaret did not speak of those years very much, and when she did, you could see in her face how painful it was for her to be separated from her family in such a traumatic way. While the older siblings attempted to help Joseph over the next few years, he sank deeper into alcoholism and depression. Rumor has it that he eventually found himself homeless in Chicago. Margaret told stories of how when she was old enough, she and her siblings would go to Chicago to find her father and provide him with help and support. But each time they seen him, he seemed to be getting worse. Sadly, in 1951, just 6 years after Lillian's death, Joseph was found deceased at the age of 64 from the effects of alcoholism. His official death certificate lists his place of death as the Sidewalk, 511 West Madison Street, downtown Chicago. By this time, Margaret was nearly 20 years old and was beginning to make a life of her own. Around 1949, after Margaret aged out of the orphanage programs, she took her very first job at Briggs & Stratton. She was determined to make a way for herself. However, soon after starting her new position at the factory, Margaret's life would change forever. Margaret's supervisor was a handsome gentleman recently out of the Air Force by the name of Eugene Rossey. Eugene was completely smitten with Margaret, and one day he told her that she would never have to work again if she was his girl. In 1951, she began the rest of her life as Eugene's bride, Mrs. Rossey. At heart, Eugene was always an entrepreneur. He and Margaret made an excellent team to not only run a business, but to also raise a family. Eugene started a construction business among many other ventures, and Margaret supported him each step of the way. If she was not playing the role of his secretary, she was on the job site, or making lunch for the crew, watching the children, or assisting however she was needed. In the meantime, Mr. and Mrs. Rossey would have 7 children together between the years of 1952 and 1965. Marge and Jean welcomed Eugene Jr., Sherry, Donna, Margaret, Dean, Doreen, and Kurt, and the Rossey clan was established. Despite being busy raising a family of 7 children and supporting her husband's many business ventures, throughout the years, Margaret also kept in close contact with all of her siblings, and Eugene always made sure of that. In fact, Margaret's sisters Joyce and her husband Stanley lived right next door to them for many years. The Rossey home was always open and welcoming, and family was a significant priority. It was never uncommon for a sibling, niece, nephew, adult child, or family friend to be living with Marge and Jean. Eventually, starting in 1972, the Rosseys would start to welcome their grandchildren. Throughout the next couple of decades, their children would bless them with 26 grandbabies, and they adored each and every one of them. In turn, those 26 grandbabies gave them 56 great-grandchildren starting in 1997. The home was always vibrant, full of people, full of laughter, and full of love. It was the best kind of chaos that any home could wish for. Backyard family days by the big pool, indoor card games with lots of laughter, late-night parties celebrating weddings, birthdays, holidays, and weekends, family pets that included a talking parrot named Baby, a summer lake house where the parties continued, early morning family meetings before setting out to do a job for Gene & Son or A1 Builders. Kids being kids every day of the week in that house. I mean, most kids think of Grandma's house as boring, but not the Rossey grandkids. Grandma's house was a place to be for adventure, fudge pops, and family togetherness. Even sick days home from school at Grandma's house watching Price is Right and soap opera were just the best. All of this family history that their home hosted, and so many fun times. But it was the unconditional love that they gave over and over that kept us all coming back. Simply watching the way that they welcome people into their home with their generous hearts could make you a better person. It was such a blessing to watch a family so large be so close for so many years. It was truly a beautiful thing to witness. In 2001, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a couple of their great-grandchildren, Mr. and Mrs. Rossey renewed their wedding vows at the original church where they were married in 1951, St. Martin de Porres in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The vow renewal and the 50th anniversary celebration were a beautiful family memory that has been cherished, and it will continue to bring joy as the memories grace us for many years to come. It was around this time that Marge and Gene began to start settling into retirement. Of course, with Gene being an entrepreneur, it was a slower process. In 2005, they purchased their final home in Plymouth, Wisconsin, leaving the hustle and bustle of the city of Milwaukee behind them. It was a home perfect for them, with lots of living space for family to be with them, and eventually take care of them in their older age. They enjoyed being surrounded by family every day of their lives, and watching their family grow brought them true fulfillment. Devastatingly, after nearly 64 years of marriage, in 2015, Gene passed away at the age of 85. It was a beautiful ceremony with military honors and so many loved ones there to support Marge. Although she missed the love of her life dearly, Marge continued to find fulfillment in watching their family grow. In 2019 and 2021, Marge was able to welcome into this world their first two great-great-grandchildren. Around this same time in 2020, Marge's family threw her a 90th birthday surprise party. They also created a video of her life story with old footage edited in of her husband Gene singing Happy Birthday, and the room was moved to tears.
It's your husband.
Although there was a bit of sadness that was felt for all that Marge had lost in her 90 years, the celebration of all of the love that she created went on to be a fabulous way to honor her legacy. Marge had a sparkle in her eyes that day that her family had not seen in a long time. There was a candy buffet and a huge cake, and enough laughter and joy to last a lifetime. And Marge did not just sit on the sideline and watch her family have fun either. She danced with the best of them. 2 years later, in 2022, Marge would get together one last time as a whole with her family to sadly mourn the life of her granddaughter Valerie, or affectionately known to the family as Boo Boo. The sudden and tragic loss of this sweet soul left a hole in the family that will never close, but Boo Boo left a light in all of our hearts that will always remain. Marge stayed surrounded by family and enjoyed the laughter of life until the very day she left this earth. On July 11, 2024, just a few months shy of her 94th birthday, Marge took her last breath here on Earth. She is now reunited in eternal peace with her parents, siblings, loving husband, and beautiful grandchildren Richard, Misty, and Valerie. Beyond the family that she created and the many years of generosity, gratitude, laughter, and love that she gave, Margaret Effert Rossey's legacy is a life well lived. A life well lived is a precious gift of hope and strength and grace from someone who has made our world a brighter, better place. It is filled with moments both sweet and sad, with smiles and sometimes tears, with family bonds and good times shared and laughter through the years. A life well lived is a legacy of joy and pride and pleasure, a living, lasting memory for our grateful hearts to treasure.